Hello, my deeply decaying but deemingly desirable, decorative, and from my point of view, digital-only daffodils. Dexter's back, and so am I, here to talk about it. Jesus Christ, prepare for a big one here, because this episode's over an hour long, it's layered, it introduces a bunch of new characters and all this shit. There's a lot to talk about, so sit back and let me just throw a bunch of information your way. This time, of course, it's Dexter Resurrection, episode 4, titled Call Me Red. And just before I start, I also just want to briefly apologize for this getting up pretty late. I had a bunch of problems when I tried to record this for the first time. Yes, this is a redo. I was very frustrated last night. There was a storm, I lost power, I recorded with no audio, all this stuff happened. It was just a string of bad luck all night, but here we are, let's get to it. So, the episode opens with a zooming shot of the back of a mysterious hooded figure. Ooh, who could it be? It's seemingly Red Ronald's dark passenger killer character, but he's dead, so ooh.
But I thought you were dead!
Who could it be? Well, obviously it's actually just Dexter in disguise. You know, having already killed the original guy last week. So here now, Dexter's donning all black and big stupid sunglasses. And of course, that sick as hell camera shy infrared hoodie material stuff that's gonna hide his face for all those to not see. With the intentions of infiltrating Peter Dinklage's special team of killers via stolen invitation from last week's episode. And with that, I just gotta say, Resurrection is like starting to heat up. Things are getting spicy and I'm actually getting pretty excited here. And I will just be upfront here and say, this is the best episode of Resurrection so far, easily, like by far, and I was pretty fucking into this thing. This is good stuff. I'm excited to talk about it. Okay, so from here though, we jump straight into Ghost Harry conversation material. What do you think? Dexter asks to Harry, who responds worriedly like the Morty to Dexter's Rick. He thinks this whole thing might be a trap as he experienced similar police traps back in his policing days. But Dexter argues back that he meant what did he think about like his undercover outfit, not so much the plan as a whole. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't want like general advice on that stuff. He just wants some fashion advice, you know? And, you know, I love me some Dexter smartassery like that. But then he does jump right back into logic by explaining that the invitation was with Red Ronald's very obvious serial killer trophies in the form of his victims' driver licenses. And there's no way that the police wouldn't have busted him with even just that. No. This is a seemingly harmless serial killer dinner party. And Dexter is just about the most excited that we've ever seen him be as he prepares for the Bay Harbor butchering buffet of a lifetime. What's even better in Dexter's mind too is that there's not really much risk involved here in being found out either, as Red Ronald was such a private person whose identity was well hidden, and these people that he's intending to befriend and probably kill, let's be honest, don't even know what he looked like. So this should be a piece of cake. There's not really much hesitation on Dexter's part, and it just feels like this weird, easy experiment that he's going to take part in more so than anything else. It is probably here though where I should point out though that though Dexter does come across as confident and chill about the plan so far, Ghost Harry is obviously just a figment of Dexter's imagination and, you know, an extension of his subconscious. So there still must be at least some doubt somewhere deep planted within his mind somewhere. Because if Ghost Harry realizes, you know, the negative possibilities, well, that's all coming from Dexter's knowledge. Obviously, this is all in Dexter's head. This is from his brain. So he's aware of the, you know, the potential dangers as well, and kind of is choosing to ignore that stuff. As he does say early in the episode that he's sick of being careful, which does feel a little bit like a bit of like a tantrum or something to me. It came off as a bit childish where it's like, well, yeah, you chose this life. You got to be careful, Dexter. But you know, we're going to see where that goes as he chooses to not be so careful in the following episodes. And that's only going to be bad for him, but good for us viewers. Anyway, next on the agenda is finalizing his little inventive solution to the required fingerprint problem in which access will only be granted by. As per the ending of last week's episode though, Dexter's got this covered and had obviously cut off Red Ronald's thumb and has kept a mold of it with tape ready to be stuck onto his own finger with some sort of like solvent or whatever. And as he does so, he asks, who's got a fake print and passes for Red? This guy to Harry. And it's here where I gotta say that Dexter, as a character, is just on fire with the jokes at the moment. In comparison to New Blood, which was very, like, dour and depressing the entire time. You know, it had moments of levity, but a lot of it was, like, quite dark and serious and somber. But with Resurrection, there's some good joke-em-ups here, and I'm actually pretty excited to, you know, be experiencing that kind of stuff too. There's quite a bit of moments of humor and everything, and kind of feels like classic Dexter days. Resurrection's really getting on my good side here. Harry, though, playing the cautious side of Dexter's mind, continues to lay down the facts of risk. He points out that there's only ever been one other known serial killer meetup that's happened before, hosted by a real-life Canadian serial killer known as the Pig Farmer, who I googled, by the way, and apparently who only died last year. His name was Robert Picton, the Pig Farmer, killed at least 26 people, all women, in the late 90s to early 2000s, and sounds like a real catch. And yeah, who died in prison last year, boo-hoo for him. But anyway, this guy apparently invited other serial killers to his own personal farm, supposedly for not much else than hosting orgies and whatnot, according to Harry anyway. But Dexter promises that if this meetup turns out to be too good to be true, anything weird like that goes on, he'll be prepared, readying a box cutter to take on the move just in case. Because, as we all know, Dexter is a good, moral serial killer, not a weird orgy having one. That would be crazy! So now, out in the public, a disguised Dexter heads off into Central Park to be picked up by Uma Thurman herself. But not really Uma Thurman herself. No, it's Uma Thurman playing a character on a TV show, if you can believe it. And the character is named Charlie. Dexter introduces himself simply as Red, playing this reluctant character of few words. On the way to their mystery location with Red Dexter riding shotgun, though, they discuss the invitation. We gather intel that Charlie is not the friend who sent the invitation, but was just the one who left it. Which, I mean, we pretty much already knew because Peter Dinklage is like, you know, the one in charge of this group. That's not exactly a secret. It was in the trailers and stuff. And along with like the cast reveals and everything, we kind of get that idea already if we know what's coming from these episodes at all. But still, it's a little piece of information for Dexter to, you know, get. So it's just a natural little tiny bit of progression for the story. So it's fine. I'm not like complaining that this is like a redundant scene and I hate it or something. It's okay. Charlie also lets us know that Red was hard to track down, confirming to Dexter and to us that he had no online photos and that Dexter's new friends definitely didn't know what he looked like, which is a good sign for Dexter as he leans into this little acting gig, telling her that he was first spooked by the invitation and almost skipped town upon discovering it, but decided to stick around once he saw the financial gift of cash, a peace offering that successfully showed intention and pulled through for him. Kind of made him be like, oh, maybe these guys are legit or whatever. Although to me, I just gotta say, if I'm a serial killer and I'm getting these weird invitations from psychos who want to meet me and stuff, along with a bag of cash, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? This is suspicious as hell. I wouldn't trust that for a second, but I guess in the Dexter world, it just makes sense. Anyway, as the two arrive at a luxurious looking building and head inside before catching an elevator up, not Uma Thurman, but Charlie first frisks Dexter. Up front though, he tells her he has a box cutter on him, explaining that he didn't know what he was walking into, which is pretty fair enough, right? And she gives the okay, but does take the box cutter, as well as Dexter's stolen Red Ronald trophy of a victim's license, which kind of plays as like an access pass for the whole night as well. But it is here where I kind of interestingly have to point out that upon receiving the trophy though, Charlie seems to have a bit of distaste for the macabre. She kind of eyes Dexter and the license in a subtle but strong way, indicating to me that she doesn't love the idea of what's going on here, but is merely acting as a loyal employee. I don't think she's like gonna stop it or anything like that, but I just don't think she's quite tantalized by the idea of serial killers and whatnot. Anyway, now the elevator then requires the promised thumbprint that Dexter was already prepared for, but in a moment of suspense, the scanner doesn't work at first. Oh no! But after like a bit of a wipe or whatever and some breath, you know, applied, the sensor then accepts the print and up we go! It was really just a bit of unnecessary like suspense or whatever, you know, it's just that tiny bit of doubt that, oh no, the sensor's not going to work, Dexter's going to get found out. It didn't really add to the plot overall, but it's just those tiny little moments of suspense that Dexter always excels at. It's just a bit of fun and, you know, we kind of needed it. Not everything could just go absolutely perfectly, so it makes sense. Anyway, onto the penthouse suite now. Dexter and Charlie await before being enthusiastically greeted by Peter Dinklage's character named Leon Prader, the man of the manor and who must be the richest fucking man on earth, by the way, judging by their environment. They're in like this fucking mansion, castle, palace, whatever you want to call it. It looks like the most fucking expensive room in existence. Anyway, first impressions though are everything, and to either party both seem pleasantly surprised. Leon Prader, who wasn't sure what to expect from such an elusive guest, is happy to put a face to the name, and Dexter seems to be glad that Leon Prader's not just some pig farmer like Robert Picton or whatever, and there seems to be some sort of legitimacy to who he is. The two seem to immediately respect each other in a way, but they're also very cautious of each other. You get the sense that they're both, I mean, we already know Dexter is, but we get the sense that they're both dangerous people who are interacting in a friendly way at the moment, but we get the idea that shit's probably going to go down later on in this season, and I'm excited to see where this is headed. I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic between the two. What's interesting here too, though, is that Leon Prader reveals to not be like him, in which he means he isn't a serial killer himself. He self-admittedly lacks the prowess and technical know-how of being able to do those that he's interested in do. Instead of participating in the lifestyle, let's say, Leon Prader describes himself as just a fan of the sport, a super fan of killers. But by day, he is a venture capitalist focused on incubating and curating startup companies, which I'll just pretend to understand what the fuck that means. But yeah, basically he's leading like this weird double life. He's quite a successful man, but he's also a very eccentric man with very niche interests. From here, Leon Prader wishes to show who he knows to be Red, his own personal collection of serial killer memorabilia memorabilia hidden within an entire secret chamber locked away somewhere behind his personal wine cellar. A room in which Charlie, by the way, does not also enter, being that she doesn't appreciate it, according to Leon Prader. Though the two clearly respect each other in Charlie and Leon Prader, there's this kind of little interesting divide between the two. Anyway, within the room, though, consists of many things, including a Pogo the Clown costume, which was John Wayne Gacy's original clown getup, as well as Jeffrey Dahmer's fridge, Ed Gein's lampshade made of the dead, Charles Manson's guitar, some kind of chair having something to do with Ted Bundy. I don't even know what, and I don't really want to know what that's about, and all sorts of various other tidbits of real-life serial killer history. This is where Dexter, as a show from the start, just by the way, as well as with New Blood and Original Sin, always kind of toes the line with. It never really delves too deeply into the real-life side of like serial killers and stuff very often. With Original Sin, we did see that Dexter was a fan of these people, but I feel like Dexter as a show throughout all of its seasons is careful to not visualize and romanticize this side of things too much. You know, being a big fan of Dexter and a big fan of like fake fictional serial killers and stuff and having a bit of fun in that way, I do think there's an important distinction there where we don't kind of idealize the real life side of this stuff, where, you know, that stuff is just getting into like exploitative area and it just feels a little bit gross. That being said, I did watch the Dahmer show and I thought that was fantastic, so maybe I'm just full of shit. Anyway, but then we get the creme de la creme, or whatever the word is, where we get the fictional Dexter killer historical artifacts the Prader has collected over the years, including the murder weapon, hammer of the Trinity Killer, the table of which the infamous ice truck killer had died, being Dexter's very own brother, of course, and finally, the most iconic to us, the blood slides of the original Bay Harbor Butcher. And Dexter is clearly instantaneously emotional over seeing his precious blood slides once again, as well as by Leon Prader's willingness to share empathy for his deceased secret brother, but opts to not show it, of course, and, you know, blow his cover or whatever. But it is here where I kind of have to ask, where were the blood slides last we knew? Because Dexter never got found out to be the Bay Harbor Butcher definitively by anybody, so I would have thought they were still in his Miami apartment, like even if somebody else had brought it or something at this point. I don't really understand exactly where they were last we knew. I remember at one point he destroyed the blood slides. I think, was that at the start of season 5 after Rita died? Maybe, or maybe it was in like season 6 or something. The point is, he destroyed his blood slides and then he started collecting them again at some point. I don't remember where they were last. I'm kind of confused by that, so just let me know what you think in the comments, what your theory is on that. I'm sorry, I don't have the answers. Dexter is then promised to meet more of Leon Prader's guests whose trophies are also on display here, including the Rapunzel killer, who has a set of various bunches of hair. To which Dexter's voiceover sarcastically says, how great, I get to meet the fucking ponytail guy, like who gives a shit, you know? As well as a piece of serial killer art displaying severed tattoo sleeves from someone named the Tattoo Collector, which is such an icky concept to me, just by the way. I'm just imagining like, you know, being skinned alive from my tattoos and just how ouchy that must be. And that's putting it lightly, obviously. I don't know, there's just something about like that. There's intimacy to that, there's precision to that. I don't know, I just cringe at that thought. Anyway, and besides these, Prader acknowledges that he also has set up a place for Red's trophies too, provided that he's willing to part ways with them anyway. Dexter acts real distraught for a second about getting rid of it before handing the license that he brought with him his way. But it is here where I kind of got to call bullshit, to be honest. I don't believe that this would ever work, and not so much because like this is too far-fetched in terms of how rich this guy is or how interested he is in serial killers or any of these kinds of things. But the taking of the trophies part is just a step too far out of believability for me. Even if he pays for them, serial killers aren't the types to just give important pieces of themselves up like that to anybody. I don't believe that they could be brought like that. Their trophies are an extension of themselves. They're priceless to them. It would be like selling a child or something, or at least like, I don't know, something very, very precious to you, like an art piece that you created or something like that. There's just something way too unbelievable about them getting rid of their trophies. Like, even if he was paying an exorbitant amount or whatever, like, it doesn't matter. I just don't believe that. As well as the fact that this is all very heavy evidence that they're leaving behind in Prader's hands too. Even if he's trusted and even if he's heavily guarded with security within this building and this room and so on, it's still such a big risk for these serial killers to be taking here. And I'm just not sure I really buy that they would. I don't know. Again, I don't think it's that serious an issue where I'm like, I have to pick this apart. Oh no, this is terribly written and I hate this. No, not at all. It doesn't ruin it. There's always been a bit of a layer of silliness. And to be honest, while we're actually visualizing this stuff taking place, it's not as silly as I feared. So that's really only a good sign. There's just a little bit of an aspect here where at least if I were a serial killer, which obviously I'm not, but if I were, like, I wouldn't trust the guy. I guess is all I'm saying. Anyway, now cut to the arrival of one of the guests, Mia, played by Jane from Breaking Bad herself, Kristen Ritter, who is now in both of my all-time favorite shows, so kudos to her. It is a bit Kafka-esque though. I don't even know what that means. Anyway, Mia, known to the public in universe as Lady Vengeance, is a killer notorious for taking out sexual predators. Dexter is immediately interested as they kind of share that similarity in arguably deserving victims. So there's just already a bit of a connection between the two, like instantaneously right as they meet. So vaguely smitten, the two drink together, but quickly Lady Vengeance proves herself to be a bit too fancy for Dexter to truly fit in with, as she pretentiously gets on his ass about how to correctly enjoy wine. Pretty tasty, he awkwardly reviews. And I'm not saying this so much in a way where it's like, oh, he just thinks she's a stuck-up bitch and hates her or whatever. Like, no, I'm just saying she does come across as a little bit more fancy than he is, and he doesn't quite fit in exactly, but they still seem to be getting along quite well. The two like each other, is my point. Anyway, next up is Cam from Modern Family's Eric Stone Street as a character named Al Jolly, who is the aforementioned Rapunzel ponytail killer guy. Yeah, Al Jolly is his name. Anyway, he walks in as a loudmouth but seemingly friendly dad. He also comes across as like extremely lame, speaking on the phone to his kid, praising them for having scored a goal or whatever, saying he loves them and coming in to greet who he calls Mamma Mia! He almost comes across as like a stereotypical nice guy and kind of who you get the idea of being like that very generic idea of what a pedophile looks like. You know, you slap a mustache on this guy and there's just something there where he comes across as creepy immediately. You know, he's seemingly great on all fronts and everything, and he appears to be a nice guy, but there's just something clearly a bit off about him where you don't really want to interact with the guy. At least that's the sense I got. We also learn though that he has a thriving family with multiple kids and takes these regular business trips to go out on the scene and kill when need be. He sees it as him getting out to do something for himself as a form of self-care so that he can be a better family man upon return. And the way he describes it almost sounds healthy. It's like, fuck, is Al Jolly like more well-adjusted than me? That's not a good thing. Anyway, what's interesting too though is that this is something that Dexter has always been jealous of, being able to balance having a successful family life as well as engaging in the killing lifestyle since way back in his Trinity killing days of 2009. What's funny too is that I'm sure this Al Jolly guy is balancing things just fine at the moment and has been for a long time, but has probably just met his maker in Dexter and all things are soon to crumble for him. I mean, that's just an assumption, but I mean, it's pretty clear that that's where things are headed, right? Dexter's about to fuck these people up. But yeah, there's just something interesting about that dynamic too. This guy's kind of like the Trinity Killer version 2 or something. Anyway, next in attendance is Barney Stinson himself, Neil Patrick Harris's character named Lowell, which, by the way, when I'm reading it anyway, it's spelled Lowell. That's Lowell to me. That's how I'm gonna say it, Lowell. But whenever the characters seem to pronounce it in the show, they just say like lol, like laugh out loud, lol. I'm kind of confused about how to pronounce it. I'm gonna say Lowell. That's how I say it. That's how I read it. Maybe it's the accent or something. Maybe I'm just dumb and I've never met somebody with this name before. I don't know. But anyway, Lowell, aka the aforementioned tattoo collector, welcomes Dexter. He says, "Welcome to the freak show." And so one by one, we get another one of the guest star serial killer characters, this time in the form of David Dasmalchian's Gareth, who is also known as the Gemini Killer. And upon entrance, he is called Gare Bear, who according to Lowell must have been voted the most likely to kill people in high school, because he just does come across as that predictably Dasmalchian-esque regular creepy character. You know, there's just something about him where it's like, yeah, that dude's a serial killer. I don't know, maybe it's the way that he plays his roles or something. I love Dasmalchian as an actor, but there's just something off about him, right? There's just something like he looks like kind of a creepy guy and whatnot. I mean, he leans into that really well here. It's a perfect kind of role for him to play. Anyway, now that we have our cast set up, we cut to dinner time, where we're informed that there was meant to be one more guest, according to jolly old Al, who asks if Keith will be joining them. But Prader vaguely lets them know that he broke the rules of turning against this group and had to be dealt with, in the form of a visualization of Charlie hitting him with a baseball bat in the briefest flashback you've ever seen in your life. The thing is, though, this also does confirm that Charlie's no stranger to violence. But again, I think it's more so she can be okay with it and capable of it when she is doing it for, you know, for work or for security or something, for like a good reason. But just killing innocent people in serial killing ways is quite the step up, and she doesn't quite, you know, she views that as different. Anyway, this of course is also establishing that Leon Prader is not somebody to be fucked with, and this group isn't the safest option to like tear apart, setting up the stakes for when Dexter inevitably begins to do so, and will be assuredly putting a target on his back when he does so. But for now, the new status quo is placed, and we finally have the rest of the episode and season to play with what's now been established. We can rest a bit easy now that we've actually met these characters and everything. Things aren't quite feeling as cringe as I feared, and I'm feeling pretty good at this point, you know what I mean? Anyway, from there, the group then enjoys sharing their meal of lavish steaks and salads and whatnot together, only for Prader to excitedly reveal to Dexter his special vegan meal that he went out of his way to prepare for Red upon his diet, deeply disappointing Dexter as the others rip into a good serving of meat. And it's a bit funny, like, like, what a waste, and what are the odds that the guy who Dexter, you know, whose identity he takes just happened to be a vegan. Like, what bad luck is that? But also, it's pretty low stakes. Like, who cares that Dexter doesn't get to eat some red meat for this one night? Like, it's not really the biggest problem in the world or whatever. Boo-hoo him. Anyway, as they finish their meal, Neil Patrick Harris's Lowell announces that it's time to show off a multimedia presentation to show and tell to the group. Dexter's voiceover dreads the possibility of being shown something as mundane as a stranger's vacation slideshow, to which Mia leans over and says if Lowell plays a vacation slideshow, she requests permission to light herself on fire. And it's here where he just gets that little bit more interested in her again. It's like, is she reading Dexter's mind or whatever? They have some, you know, vague similarities in these ways. And to that, yeah, Dexter's developing a little bit of a crush. How cute. As for the presentation itself though, Lowell shows his potential next victim's page on Instagram, a woman named Jules, who is in the middle of getting her next tattoo, and who he found from various tattoo artists that he also follows. This is his way of finding targets. His reason for choosing so is interestingly boring though. He goes on to explain that once he saw this woman's new piece, a realism portrait of her recently deceased dog, that he just had to have it. The tattoo itself, the artistic piece of skin. It's not so much that he needs to kill Jules specifically, it's just that he wants to literally collect the tattoos upon which unfortunately take place amongst his victim's skin. I mean, he's not exactly torn up about it. He's still an obsessive, crazy serial killer guy. He's still fucked up in the head, and he's still very willing to kill all these people and stuff, as he describes his strong desire to kill, which cannot be stopped once it's started. Which the group all kind of share and relate to this idea, whether they call it their itch or need or yearning, great yearning. They all relate to this feeling of not being able to put away the feeling of needing to kill. As Dexter shares that his version of this is what he calls the urge. I'd also argue that he also calls it the dark passenger, right? But that's kind of his alias at the moment, so I guess the urge will do for now. Anyway, what's almost even creepier though is that the tattoo that Lowell is describing isn't even finished yet. He informs the group that Jules has a few more sessions to go, but that he'll be ready when it's done, and before he leaves town, that she will be his. Something that kind of sends shivers down my spine, where it's just like, I don't know, there's just something really creepy about like putting something positive out there online. You're like excited to get a tattoo and stuff, but little do you know like who is watching you and what they're planning to do to you. I don't know, it just kind of shows, you know, how scary the internet can be and how vast it can be. You don't know who's looking at you and all that kind of stuff. I say, posting this shit to the internet, fuck. Anyway, it's a really cool idea for a movie or show though, for there to be a killer who takes tattoos like this. But the fact that he also wants to skin off a fresh tattoo from this poor woman, it kind of bothers me like the most of all. You know, because new tattoos are like such a sensitive area, and it comes across as like pure evil to me to want to fuck with that. But maybe I'm just taking that personally, being somebody who has tattoos, I guess. I can kind of feel like what that would feel like, and it's just so bad. I don't have words for it. It's fucked up. I'm like, what an asshole. Anyway, upon this though comes the end of the dinner party, to which Leon Prader says he hopes Red will be comfortable sharing his side of things as he's just seen Lowell do, but next time. Meaning this wasn't just a one-time thing, which I think we as viewers already kind of had the idea of. But Dexter is both surprised and vaguely delighted to hear about the opportunities which will be presented to him. Clearly he has a bit of a challenge to set up here too, because I mean, it's quite obvious where things are going, right? He's going to start taking these fuckers out at some point, and he's going to have to do it without getting caught. Of course, I do think he's going to make the exception of Mia. I don't think he's going to kill her, because Dexter is currently, at least, KISS kissing in a tree with her. Anyway though, but the plan is then set into motion to meet up again soon. During the unofficial kind of after party before they actually leave though, Dexter connects more with Mia once again, whom both immediately tried snooping information of online, but both pretty much came up with nothing. The two then go on to briefly discuss their origins, and I'm like, Mia, you probably should have watched Original Sin. But she guesses that Dexter, who she knows as Red, had mummy issues from his past, to which he says he actually had a great mum. A bit of an outlier for the group, Mia says. Dexter says he's not immune to mummy issues. He did lose her in a horrific way. Dexter then confides a bit more privately in Mia. What is all this? He asks, gesturing everything around them. What is Prader getting out of this? She's eager to share, but insists that they meet up later to do so. She says it was nice meeting him, and she's gonna leave. And it's clear here, though, that we are assuredly in the presence of the next Dexter girlfriend as she bids farewell. And even though usually I'm kind of disinterested in Dexter having girlfriends after Rita, I always think it's an unnecessary bit of drama that they just chuck in there to make it as like exciting as possible or whatever. It always feels a little bit like unnecessary to me and whatever. I get a bit annoyed by it. Hannah McKay especially and whatnot. But this time, I don't hate it. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I like Kristen Ritter or something, but there's just something about their chemistry here where I'm actually buying it. Maybe it's because they're both killers or something. Feels like it's going to be less toxic on Dexter's part because it's like he's not like lying to somebody or whatever. There's just something interesting about their connection here that I'm interested to see more of. It could also be because she's really pretty and I don't hate looking at her. Oh, that sounded so creepy. Anyway, upon their exit from the night, Charlie hands everybody phones to connect to each other in their absence before their next meeting, which will take place in 2 weeks. Leon Prader thanks them for joining him, and that's that. Dexter, being the new guy though, has one last little moment with Leon Prader before getting out of there, saying he appreciated the night and that he was able to say things aloud that he's never done so before, which is kind of bullshit, I have to say, to be honest though, given that Dexter has had numerous people throughout his life become aware of his actions. Throughout the original series, you know, we had briefly Brian Moser, we had Dokes for a few episodes, Miguel at one point knew, Lumen for all of season 5. There was obviously Deborah for 2 full seasons. Yes, she had issues with it, but still she knew and she loved him to some extent, even throughout all of that. And Hannah McKay, of course, knew everything as well. This is not the first time that people know about your life, Dexter. Not to mention all the honesty that he showed his victims throughout the entire series as well before taking them out. Though I'll be charitable and I won't count those as they weren't ongoing relationships, so fair enough. But still, he'd been open and honest plenty of times. Shut the fuck up, Dexter. You're delusional where you're like, oh my god, finally somebody understands me. Every time he finds somebody who understands him, he acts like it's the first time it's ever happened. But it's been happening since season 1, dude. Everybody knows. Not everybody knows, but like, there's been people and you keep acting like there hasn't been. Anyway, still, it's nice in a fucked up way though that here's a place to not feel so alone. For as long as this all works out anyway. Because I get the idea that, you know, things are about to implode at some point soon enough. Afterwards, Dexter is seen walking the New York City streets, ordering chili dogs and walking through a busy Times Square. And it's here where I'm like, surely they shot this on location, right? You can't fake that. Or maybe you can, I don't know. But I wish I was an extra, is what I'm saying. I wish I showed up somehow. Not that I'm anywhere near New York, just ever. Anyway, but here in New Times Square. What is it? Times Square. Dexter sees a billboard with Leon Prader on it. And we get the sense that he's a well-known businessman, but he just happens to have this very weird hobby on the side. And upon arriving back at home, Dexter watches Blessing and his family through the window, enjoying their time together as a family. He can acknowledge that they are nice, innocent people who he does like, but he's also aware that he doesn't feel the connection with people like these as he does with those who he'd just spent the night with. The ironic tragedy, of course, being that Dexter can't live with those who kill, and can't really join them either, as he also needs to kill himself, and those are who his targets turn out to be. It brings me back to the words of the invitation from last week's episode. Yours is a lonely path, let's walk it together. You know, it's kind of like, it's the tragedy that Dexter has always faced throughout this entire series, where, yes, even though I just complained about it before that people did find out, he's still always felt so alone and uncertain about, like, his own actions and what the right thing to do is. The scene ends, though, with a text from Mia telling him to meet her the following day, which is just kind of like that little sense of light in Dexter's story, I suppose. Cut 2. Angel Batista now in New York City, knocking on the door of who he believes may be in contact with Dexter Morgan, with Dexter's old car parked outside his apartment. A Lance Thomas, who is Harrison's co-worker, answers the door, expecting just like a food delivery or whatever, and I'm like, fuck, that'd be me, oh damn it. And obviously he gets immediately disappointed that just some random cop has shown up at his door. Eventually though, he informs Batista that he bought the vehicle from Harrison Morgan recently, setting Batista to now decide to tail him first now in the hopes of getting to Dexter. On to the Harrison side of things, we cut to the old hotel that he works at as he conversates with Elsa, who, much like Blessing and his whole deal with helping Dexter be the best Uber driver in the world, Elsa's here to give pointers on customer service and being the best hotel worker that there ever was. And it's here where, if we read between the lines, this scene is actually really just of Harrison and Elsa flirting a little bit, just a little bit, you know, where they're still friendly or whatever, but there's a little bit of connection between them too. If you kind of decipher the subtext and stuff, I'm a very eagle-eyed viewer, so, you know, you're lucky you're watching my video here because nobody else would be pointing this out to you. Nobody else would notice the subtlety. Anyway, but their conversation is then interrupted by a phone call to Harrison from a place called Quinton's Jewelry Repair, calling to inform him that his watch is now ready to be picked up. And with that, I just gotta ask, does that sound familiar to last week's episode? No! That's because it happened before last week's episode, so I never actually talked about the watch in a video. Whoopsie. So basically, the needed context here is that this was Ryan Foster's watch, the recently deceased by Harrison's own doing, and whose watch he was gonna take care of for. Only to forget this one loose end, as did I until this very moment that it happened in the episode. Yeah, it's just one little loose end, it's just one little connection that Harrison had to Ryan Foster. Though I will say it's not 100% like evidence of his guilt or anything, but it's just another little reminder that there's so many moving little pieces and there's so many things to trip up on. Anyway, upon returning to the hotel though, after picking up the watch later, Harrison is shown guiltily walking in, but is then unexpectedly greeted by some weird guy with a hat and a lisp named Angel Batista. Who the fuck is this guy? And Harrison doesn't remember the guy at all. which is believable enough to be honest, as he was pretty young back in the original Dexter series. But he is reminded when Batista says that his sister Jamie, who is now a middle school principal, used to babysit him, who he does fondly remember. And it does make sense because if we remember back in the original series, at least after Rita died, just how much Dexter would offload Harrison to various people all the time at every hour of every day while he was off killing people or getting with Hannah McKay or whatever. He was like, Deb, look after Harrison. Jamie. Look after Harrison. British woman whose name I forget, look after Harrison. All these situations. He just never wanted to spend time with his own son. He was off doing TV stuff. Anyway, apparently the last time that Batista saw Harrison was on his 4th birthday. Harrison's 4th birthday. Obviously not Batista's. The two connect over some brief memories of train sets and early memories like that, and of their shared links to Dexter, until Harrison concludes that he must have heard the news that his father had been shot and killed, to which Batista interestingly doesn't correct and just shares his condolences for. He doesn't let him know that he knows that he's still alive. Batista's playing it smart, not getting too confrontational just yet, not informing him that Dexter's alive, not getting too in his face about it and all this stuff. He's not, he's playing it careful. It's like he's interacting with like a scared little kitten where he's like, all right, it's okay, before, jumping at it, trying to grab it or whatever. He doesn't want to scare Harrison off. Anyway, Harrison tells Batista that he realized Dexter wasn't the dad he thought he was and or needed, which are pretty big, fancy, judgmental words coming from Mr. I have the guy I killed's watch in my pocket right now at this very second as we speak, by the way. Batista says he shared a similar experience in realizing that Dexter wasn't who he thought he was, as Harrison puts the pieces together that this meeting isn't a random happenstance, but an executed plan, as Batista goes on to lightly and unofficially interrogate Harrison, asking him if he knows why Dexter left Miami Metro all those years ago, and if he knows much about his past at all. Harrison's not having it though, and gets up to leave, but is caught up when Batista tells him that he and his ex-wife Maria LaGuardia's theory was that Dexter was the Bay Harbor butcher. And given that he hasn't disclosed that Dexter's still alive, Batista's leverage here is that Harrison will believe that if he does say anything, that he won't be doing any harm to Dexter and, or be aiding in him getting caught since he's dead anyway. But Harrison knows better than to just give authorities what they're fishing for that easily. And even if all this is true, and even if Dexter was dead, he's still freshly killed somebody himself. So it's in Harrison's best interest to just keep quiet for now, because any little piece of information could add on to some sort of admission that he doesn't realize at the time. Batista accepts his bullshit about not knowing anything for now and invites him to come see him if he changes his mind or anything like that while he's still in town. The scene ends with Elsa then confronting Batista, saying if he thinks Harrison had anything to do with the recent murder, to back off. And her intentions are pure here, but so unnecessarily frustrating, because she has just now informed the one guy who's trying to put everything together, who didn't know about the murder, about Ryan's murder. Very helpful, Elsa, thanks. And look, I mostly kid, it's not her fault. She didn't know that there was more to this, but still. Shut the fuck up, man! Jesus Christ! You didn't have to do that. Like, what did she think that was gonna do? Who does she think she is? She's not this big, great character reference where all the cops are just gonna listen to her because she says Harrison's a nice guy. She's just some girl. They're not gonna listen to her. So it's really doing no good and has only, done damage now. It's just very annoying, especially given the fact that I know she was just trying to do a nice thing for Harrison, but you just fucked things up a little bit more. And now we cut to Harrison alone in one of the hotel rooms once again, as he's being haunted by the ticking watch of Ryan Foster, constantly inserting reminders of guilt his way. It's just ticking in his head, this constant reminder at all times, where it's just like he's worried about getting caught, he feels guilty about what he did, all this stuff. He then prompts to hang out with a friend, Elsa, of course, to not be alone. Cut to the two casually watching TV together before Harrison announces that he should probably leave, prompting Elsa to invite him to crash on her couch for the night. He says yes, and he has a moment of, let's say, clarity. He lets her know that she makes him feel at home, and he goes in to kiss her because it's just this nice little tender moment that he's feeling between the two. But she does not reciprocate at all. Whoopsie daisy. Uh-oh. What have you done, horny boy Harrison, you dirty pig? So clearly he's fucked that relationship up just a little bit. I'm sure they're gonna be fine by the next episode or whatever. But there's this little bit of an awkward moment where, yeah, things aren't quite going as well and flirtatiously as Harrison and I thought. Anyway, the next day, on his way to meeting up with Mia, Dexter is eyeing Harrison from across the city streets, secretly from his car. And I'm starting to get a bit sad watching Dexter watching Harrison. He feels like he can't approach him, but also can't seem to look away. He wants to protect him. He wants to know what Harrison's up to and all this kind of stuff. But, Harrison's only going to see Dexter as a monster. He feels horrible in his presence. And there's just that divide between them two that's just going to be hard to get rid of. He then has another ghost Harry convo about the dangers of meeting up with the dinner party crew, though. Harry thinks he needs to take them all out ASAP, as in kill them all, but Dexter thinks that he's finding connections with people. Again, though, it's really just Mia who's finding connections with. I don't really think that Dexter Dexter is, making buddy-buddy with all of these serial killers. Anyway, the way I see it is Dexter should probably just kill them all except Mia, and there's not really any problem there. The one argument being, though, that as Dexter points out, what's it going to look like when after the new guy is introduced that they all end up getting killed one by one? It's going to be pretty obvious what's going on, and so, he's got to be careful about his next steps. He's got to be careful about who and how he kills who he does. Anyway, even still, between towing the line of making friends and finding new victims, Dexter makes a call to Llewellyn now, asking if they can meet up privately sometime soon. Following this, Mia and Dexter jog through Central Park. While doing so, they discuss some important details, like they're talking while they're jogging, and Dexter's struggling to keep up with this fit woman who's very comfortable running and talking. Anyway, firstly, there is the fact that she's been attending Prader's dinner parties for 4 years now. This has been a long, ongoing thing. This wasn't just like this new spur-of-the-moment kind of thing that's just popped up now. Yeah, she's been doing it for years, and who knows how long it's been going before she signed up. And seemingly, he's been paying for them all to share their stories and trophies for years at this point as well, which is the main reason that she has joined up and keeps going and attending these things anyway. Secondly, she warns him to not break Prader's rules and the history behind some of the guests from the past, some of whom had been uninvited, some of whom had allegedly committed suicide after being kicked out of the group, and so on. There's a bit of a messy past with this group in some way, but the aim of the game is to just stay chill about it, and there shouldn't really be a problem, as well as the fact that he cannot turn on the group. That is like a vital piece of information. That is the one rule that they really care about. Something which is obviously not going to pan out, by the way. I mean, again, it's pretty obvious where things are going. This being a TV show, things are going to be about as dramatic as possible, and this being a TV show about Dexter who kills people. I mean, come on. Anyway, Mia and Dexter then talk about some personal details now. Where is she from? All over is her answer, always going somewhere new growing up, and her mum always being with a new boyfriend. She's always been a bit of a loner. She has a younger sister, Hazel, who growing up was an angel to her devil, and she's known for a long time, since very early on, that she was fucked up in serial killing ways. Dexter shares back that he had violent tendencies from a young age too, but that his dad did his best to steer him on the right path. And it's here where, Red's history and Dexter's history is kind of like the whole identity is melding here, where he's gonna have to be a bit careful to not reveal too much as the character of Red or whatever. But then again, later, I'm sure we're gonna get in this season like a scene where she's like, "What? You lied about everything to me? Ah!" I'm sure that's gonna happen soon enough. Anyway, we then get the bombshell that Mia did find another outlet though, aside from killing. Ballet at one point, dancing, and she even left home at 15 to pursue it. But upon doing so, also left Hazel behind to be what's implied to be raped and killed by their mum's current boyfriend at the time, whom became Mia's first victim. And it turned out that killing was a much better outlet, in her opinion, than ballet was to release her inner rage. And basically, that's her origin story there. That's exactly why and how she started to kill. And basically, the whole point is that it's a very empathetic story. We can very much sympathize with it and understand why and how she got there. And that's an important thing for Dexter, I feel like, and for us to kind of like this character, Soon enough, she invites Dexter over to her place, though, with the promise of pastries, which is another running gag for Resurrection, because soon enough, once they get there, she reveals that she has made vegan ones for him. That is getting to me every time, by the way, where Dexter has to, keep up with Red's vegan appearances, but is clearly, fucking annoyed about having to. By the way, Mia's apartment looks like the nicest fucking place of an apartment, ever. I mean, it's not as luxurious and extremely wealthy looking as Leon Prader's ridiculous mansion of a place, but it's still this spacious, nice, just area. I just like the look of it. I'd like to think that it's the kind of place that I'd live in if I ever moved to New York, but I also know that I would never, ever, ever be able to afford something like this. So if I ever did move there, I'd probably live above a bowling alley and beneath another bowling alley.
I live in a single room above a bowling alley and below another bowling alley.
Wow.
Mia then shows Dexter her personal collection of trophies. I guess the ones that are too precious to give away to Prader. And this to me is very meaningful. It's a big gesture and showing a lot of vulnerability and sharing quite a lot with this new person. I know they've met up in this group and have somewhat a sense of security there considering that, but it's still so wild to share so much so quickly. And it's this very intimate moment between the two. I also like this shot we get of Dexter looking down into this little box of trinkets and looking into the mirror attached, which looks eerily similar to the ending of the pilot, when Brian Moses sent his own little version of an invitation Dexter's way. Mia then excuses herself and says she's going to go have a shower, though it's pretty obvious that she's treating this as an invitation to join her. Next minute though, Ghost Harry shows up to ward Dexter away from serial killer sex. As if this would be the first time, just by the way, but Dexter then shuffles away with a non-excuse of something like, "Something's come up," or whatever. Very smooth stuff, Dexter, and he gets out of there. Next up is Dexter's meetup with Llewellyn in a bar, across the street from a tattoo shop in which his next next victim is currently getting her tattoo right there as they speak. She's nearly finished too, and it's looking like this will be her final session, which is a lot quicker than Lowell expected. Which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, just by the way, because it's not like the biggest tattoo in the world. And how many sessions do you think it's going to take, dude? Like, I guess if she did really short sessions, it could be done in numerous sessions, but I don't know. This is an aside completely and doesn't really mean anything, but if it's me, when I get tattoos, I prefer to just do it all in one go if I can. Fuck spreading the paint out, fuck having an incomplete tattoo for weeks or however long. I'd rather just get it over with. Anyway, Lowell asked if they can take a rain check for tonight because, as he says, tonight's the night, baby! In a very, inarticulate way of doing so, in comparison to when Dexter's voiceover says, tonight's the night. And I thought it was just kind of a funny comparison, because it's very clear here that, we're dealing with a douchebag serial killer. This is basically Barney Stinson as a serial killer. But yeah, he requests Dexter to be left alone so he can go on the hunt once Jules is done with the tattoo session. And there's something very primarily evil about waiting for his prey like that to me. I don't know, it's very creepy. Anyway, this though is setting things into motion, of course. Dexter has less time here than he originally thought, because he can't just let Lowell kill somebody here. Obviously, he has to intervene, potentially fucking up the whole dinner party thing he's got going on by the very next day after his first time there, by the way. Only problem is that he's also not set up for this. Upon exiting the bar that he just met Lowell in, he sees that it's going to take 2 hours just to make it back home to get his stuff and prepare for the kill. That's not taking into account the time it's going to take to get back to their current location as well. And the tattoo session has approximately 2 hours left, meaning that he really has to be there and ready within about 2 hours. He simply doesn't have the time. Fucking New York City, he says, because if he was back in Miami at the moment, he'd just drive. Later, we see the pretty Jules walking out of the store admiring her new ink as she's being tailed by Lowell, who is prepared to literally put her to sleep with gas like a dentist or whatever, with the mask and everything. It's real creepy stuff. I say as if what Dexter does isn't creepy as well, but I don't know, there's just something about Lowell, the tattoo collector, that got to me in a certain way. I don't know why. I feel like, Dexter as a show is mostly, yes, it's about serial killers, but it's about the fun side of serial killers, right? It's not really the deepest, darkest, most disturbing show ever. But I don't know, there was something disturbing about this character, especially since when he's not killing, he seems like a chill dude that you'd like to hang out with and stuff, and kind of in a way. I don't know, there's just something creepy about that duality. His character got under my skin, ironically, with the whole tattoo thing that he does. Anyway, of course though, before Lowell gets the chance to do anything to this poor woman, Jules, Dexter makes it so that the turntables...
How the turntables...
And Lowell is the one who's going sleepy buys instead. How did he do it though? How did Dexter have the time to prepare and come back and all this stuff? Well, the answer is that Dexter has conveniently set up shop at the tattoo shop across the street. And it turns out that apparently it has everything he needs, like an abundance of plastic wrap, latex gloves so that, he's not leaving DNA all over the place, and even an apron and whatnot. Plus, Lowell brought the rest, like the murder weapon and of course the gas to put him to sleep in the first place. And honestly, that's fair enough actually. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. Tattoo shops are gonna have a bunch of that plastic wrap stuff, the cling wrap that he needs and everything. They probably would have an apron somewhere maybe. They probably would have all these sorts of things. And to be fair, there's not that much that Dexter needs. There's not that many items. So yeah, as convenient as it kind of seems, this all kind of tracks and I have no issue with it. But yeah, we then get the coolest kill room I think that we've seen in Dexter as a whole, barring the boxing ring one in the first episode of season 4 and the one where Dexter first planned to kill Hannah McKay at in the Winter Wonderland place in season 7. Also, Original Sin had the highlight of the one set in the arcade, which was really cool too. But yeah, I'd say that the tattoo shop is a top 5 location of kill rooms for me for sure. Dexter then wakes Lowell up, mockingly telling him that he was right, that tonight's the night, baby! As he'd said to him before. Seemingly unfazed though, Lowell simply seems to just accept his fate. He's kind of pissed about it, but it's not shocking given what he does with his time. He's been around murders long enough now to know that he can't really do much to alter the inevitable now that he's been caught. He kind of sits there sort of calm in a creepy kind of way. From there, the two even speak frankly. There's not really much hatred involved or anything like that. They don't, they're not angry at each other. It just is. It's just the situation that has happened. It's just turned out to be this way. Lowell lost, Dexter's gonna kill him. And it's just that. It just feels like nature, if that makes any sense. Dexter asks though why he keeps the tattooed skins, and Lowell simply says he likes looking at them, that they calm him when his urge gets strong, and that they're able to hold him off of the next kill until appropriate. He explains that if he didn't have the skins to get him by till the next, I'll say, hit or high lie or kill, whatever you want to call it, he'd have killed more often and worse in terms of sloppiness, and that it would have got him caught. And I do find that kind of interesting, especially the fact that Dexter seems to relate to this. He knows what that's like, except in his case, I would argue that the thing that's kind of holding him off of killing people 24/7 are probably the people that he loves around him. You know, it's always been like, oh, I really want to go kill, but I have responsibilities to this person. I have to show up and whatnot and all this kind of stuff. And it's just kind of that interesting difference between the two here. And to be honest, as the two speak honestly and openly with each other, I got the slightest sense of sympathy for Llewellyn. I don't really know why, because he doesn't deserve it. Maybe it's the fact that he's played by an actor I like, but it's almost like by keeping his composure and not going into the usual spiel of swearing and shouting and crying, that he comes across as more respectable. I don't know if that's the right word, but Dexter still has no qualms with killing him, and neither do I really. But it's somewhat more of a polite kill than usual, if that makes any sense. We then get the promise of Dexter going back to the basics as he readies his old blood slide style of killing by taking a framed piece of art off the tattoo shop wall and using the glass to make his slide. We're getting good old classic Dexter shit episode after episode now, and I'm fucking loving it. Stuff is getting really exciting here where it's like, oh yeah, he's getting back into his old school ways, you know? It's just like, oh man, there's something warm about this comforting, very familiar Dexter stuff. Anyway, one last thing that Dexter says to Llewellyn, though, is that he confesses that he was lying about who he was the night prior. He isn't actually Red Ronald, but he's Dexter Morgan, the Bay Harbor Butcher. And as he does so, he plants Llewellyn's own knife into his chest and the ritual is complete. Right before dying, though, as Llewellyn realizes who he is and screams in fear and pain before and after being stabbed, he then almost says something to Dexter. Just weakly enough, he starts stuttering and he says, you, before he dies, and he doesn't get a chance to finish that sentence. And it's really fucking annoying to me. I know that this is fiction and whatever, and they obviously wrote it intentionally this way, but I'm just so curious as to what he was about to say. And I guess now we're never really gonna know. Did he have some sort of interesting intel on Prader? Was he just gonna threaten Dexter? I don't know, and I really want to know. Anyway, Dex then drives off with Ghost Harry as the two drive through the city streets, Llewellyn's body in the back. Harry expresses his knowledge of who Dexter is and was, and knows that the type of weird relationship that they had with him, teaching him the code and everything while growing up, was kind of an inevitability once he found out that Dexter wasn't normal like him. And there's kind of like this sense of tragedy here, but there's also this kinship between the two, where he doesn't regret taking the time to sort of not live his idea of what a perfect life could have looked like, and instead selflessly decided to try and force Dexter into that box and live the life that Harry wanted. He kind of pushed so that Dexter got what he needed instead. And it's kind of like this lovingly sacrifice that he made and doesn't regret for a second, because it's exactly what Dexter needed at the time. And I know that this is all just Dexter technically talking to himself really, but this was kind of a really nice profound moment to me between the two. I almost feel like this is exactly how Harry would actually feel, even though he's been dead for 20 plus years. There's something, I don't know, very real about their interaction here, where I feel like, I don't know, yeah, I think that he did, in his own way, in his own eyes, do the right thing. Though, that being said, he did also kill himself once he realized what Dexter had been doing and regretted some stuff, so maybe it's not as cut and dry like that as it seems to Dexter, because this is all from Dexter's point of view. We also saw that in Original Sin that things weren't quite as clear cut as everything was too, that he did have regrets, and that maybe, you know, what he did wasn't so noble, and that he maybe made the wrong choices, that maybe by pushing Dexter into killing people like this and everything, you know, wasn't exactly the best way to go about it. Maybe he could have got Dexter the help that he needed, and he could have been a normal person. I don't know, there's that nature versus nurture argument there, and it's interesting that it can be looked at a bit differently from whatever angle you look at it from. In some ways, Harry seems kind of evil. In other ways, he seems like a noble father doing the right thing. I kind of love how complex that is. This conversation gets to Dexter though, as he's aware of the similarities with him and Harrison now, and how he wants to prioritize his son too, acknowledging that maybe hanging out with Prader's dinner crew, that he's continuing to endanger himself and the lives of those around him. Once fucking again, might I add, by the way. This is the exact same thing that he's been through since the Trinity Killer. Not to mention now that he's started killing these people too, breaking their one big rule that we know of so far by turning on the group. Like, he's just making bad decisions left, right, and center, really. It's probably just a bad idea to be interacting with these people at all, but that being said, we as viewers want to see what's going to come from it, so, you know, don't have too much of an issue with it. But there is that bit of, like, the same thing happening over and over again, where, like, I love Dexter as a show and as a character, but fuck, he has really been learning and relearning and forgetting and relearning that same lesson over and over and over and over and over again. Cut to Claudette the cop now, who's once again looking into the Ryan Foster case while listening to some funky music once again with their big stupid headphones once again, because of how wildly quirky the show wants her to come across as, before Melvin Man comes up once again to tell her to take it easy, man.
Whoa, just take it easy, man.
She's been fixating on the case, which according to Melvin Man is unhealthy for her, and she has a history of this too. And last time, it almost cost her job. Whatever that means, I don't even know. They don't go into detail, and frankly, I don't care enough about this character that it really matters to me. Anyway, next minute, Batista shows up to introduce himself, requesting to gain some info on the very case that she's been fixating on, saying that he'd also worked a case in Miami years ago where the body was cut up into 9 pieces in an eerily similar way to Ryan Foster, and that he was never sure that they caught the right guy. So it's po-po team-up time for the next few eps, making things worse for both Dexter and Harrison, of course. Speaking of Harrison, by the way, later now back at the hotel, Harrison is then confronted by Lance asking if he'd sold him a stolen car because the cops showed up at his place the other night. Lance ain't happy about it, but there's no time to worry about that guy because he's just a side character in this Harrison and Batista story, who, by the way, happens to be back at the hotel once again to catch up with Harrison. So now Batista asks Harrison about Ryan Foster, informing him that the body was dealt with in the exact same way that the Bay Harbor Butcher used to deal with his bodies. Getting mighty suspicious and not at all apprehensive about getting up in Harrison's face about this, Batista basically puts it right there all on the table about how suspicious this shit is and that Ryan Foster's body looks like it was dealt with by an expert. To which Harrison says, sounds like it's crazy! Again, to which Batista says, not so crazy if you know the son of a notorious serial killer was at the same hotel that night. And it's like, fuck! This is exactly getting to the good stuff. This is exactly where I wanted the show to be headed. Batista's actually confronting these characters. It's not Dexter just yet because he hasn't found him, but obviously he's getting right on his ass now. He's like, there's no hesitation here. Batista is on the case. And I'm excited for there to actually be consequences now. I'm excited for there to actually be, like, it's not just going to keep to the status quo, it seems, unless they just miraculously decide to be friends for whatever reason by the end of the season, but I hope not. I'm getting excited to see where this is going to be going. Anyway, from here, between the two, Batista continues to drive the scene, emphasizing on how aware he is that Ryan Foster wasn't a great guy, that it's almost like it was good riddance now that he's dead, and that once again, this might be another similarity to his dad's murderous activities. He's onto the fact that it might be possible that Dexter skewed things in a certain angle that made Harrison look at his actions as if Dexter was heroic, as if Dexter was some kind of dark avenger, which is an awesome line, but it kind of annoyed me that he didn't say the Dark Defender, like the comic book of the Bay Harbor Butcher all the way back in season 2. They made a whole episode about it called the Dark Defender, but I don't know, it's just that little bit of a difference. I guess Batista probably doesn't even remember that. Was he even there for that? I think he was, but I don't know. It's not a huge deal. Avenger makes more sense as well because Dexter kills killers who have already killed, like he kills after the fact, so he is avenging more than anything. It kind of makes more sense, to be fair, but I don't know, man. Dark Defender, Dark Avenger, he should have said Dark Defender. That's what Dexter thought of himself as for at least an episode way back in the day, and I don't know, just annoyed me, that little bit of difference there. I'm probably the only person that had an issue with that, but anyway. Batista then leans on this though and gets to Harrison's conscience by describing the other side and true nature of Dexter and his code. How it's not just the worst of the worst criminals who had been killed, but innocent people that Batista had loved as well. Mostly LaGuardia, who funnily enough though, Dexter didn't technically kill. I mean, Deb did, technically. He was gonna, so it's kind of the same difference, but it is a bit funny that the one that he picked out was technically somebody that Dexter didn't actually kill, kind of. He also mentions Harrison's mother and Aunt Deb though, and arguably though, I'm not sure Batista would have known that these were really technically Dexter's fault, because the Trinity killer killed Rita and the brain surgeon killed Deb technically. I mean, Dexter pulled the plug or whatever, but like, those ones are arguably not really Dexter's fault. I mean, from our point of view, we can see that him getting close to Trinity and not taking the opportunity to take him out led directly to Rita's death, but I don't know if Batista knows all that. And yeah, though the argument is true that some innocent people got killed, and I do think that Dexter's a bit of a hypocrite in that way, and is absolutely not perfect and everything, I do still feel like I want to defend him a little bit here, where it's like, okay, but like 98% of the people that got killed throughout the series were the worst of the worst criminals and bad people. You know? Again, I'm not advocating for it. I don't think it's okay to kill anybody. I don't think it's okay to take the law into your own hands like this and be judge, jury, executioner yourself. Nobody has the right to do that. But he was mostly like on point. I'm just saying. Batista's taking it a little bit too personally just because LaGuardia died. If she didn't die, would you care so much? I don't know. Lastly though, as Harrison tries to dismiss all that's been said, he leaves. And Batista though warns him of the dark path that he's taking and that he hopes he turns things around before it's too late. With true empathy, I really believe that Batista wants to be on Harrison's side here and, you know, take his father down and give Harrison kind of a good life. You know, he has known him since he was a child. Sure, they haven't spent any any time together in the past however many years, but since then, like, I do still believe that Batista is a good man, and he kind of, I do believe, wants what's best for everybody. Probably even Dexter himself, because he believes that Dexter being put away in prison and stuff is probably what's right for him and will lead to his rehabilitation and stuff. I believe that Batista's just, being a genuinely good person in this way, and technically we should all be on his side, but we're not, because we love Dexter and he has to go kill people. So if he ends up killing Batista by the end of this season, it's gonna hurt, but I'll stick behind him. And so now, upon exit, Harrison walks away with their conversation running in his head, Batista's warning and words and information, as well as the ticking watch once again gnawing at the inside of his head. The guilt can barely be contained as he decides to almost call Claudette the cop to make some sort of confession once and for all, before hanging up and saying nothing. But he's found himself in front of a police precinct as well now, and he's about to go inside and confess to everything as well. Right before, out of nowhere, Dexter, my main man, grabs his shoulder and says, "Don't." And Harrison, in shock, just turns around and says, "Dad?" And the episode ends there, of course, with that cliffhanger. I mean, it's not that much of a cliffhanger, I suppose. We kind of knew that this was going to be inevitable here, where, you know, Harrison was going to find out that Dexter was alive at some point, and I knew that it was going to be in person like this. Somebody wasn't just going to tell Harrison about it. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see what's going to come from the following episodes and what's going to happen between Harrison and Dexter, what's going to happen between Claudette the cop and Batista getting on their trail and everything, what's going on with Leon Prader and his whole, you know, team of serial killers and stuff, everything that's going on. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of potential for things to go right, for things to go wrong. There's a lot going on here that I'm really excited to see. The plot's starting to get real juicy with potential problems for the characters and everything, and things are just getting that much more complicated and layered, and it's just really fucking fun. And it's here where I gotta say that Resurrection is impressing the hell out of me. I mean, I liked the episodes before this, but episode 4 is a fucking banger. By far the best one so far, and it's the first time I've really felt like, fuck, why did they have to end the episode there? I need to see what's going to happen next. I didn't feel that so much with the previous episodes, but now I'm just like, I'm hyped up for next week. I can't wait to see the next episode to find out what's going to happen next. This is just the strongest I've felt about Resurrection as a whole. And it's here where I'm starting to feel a bit less pessimistic about the super spy team of serial killers, because yes, it is sort of silly, but it's not absolutely atrocious like I feared. Now that I've seen some of it actually play out, you know, inherently there is that layer of silliness to the idea that will probably never go away no matter how well it's done, but there's enough here in terms of quality that I'm not really feeling myself cringe with embarrassment or anything like that. I'm really liking the vibe. I'm liking the tone. It's fun. I'm understanding what Resurrection's getting at now. I'm kind of on its level. It's good shit. I'm starting to fall in love with it. Like, I was liking it before, but now I'm really vibing, and now I'm really like getting into the groove of Resurrection. I feel like the writers know what they're doing, and I'm starting to take that trust fall with them. I'm starting to be like, okay, maybe, just maybe, they're not going to fuck this up, and Resurrection's going to turn out to be one of the best seasons of Dexter, maybe. I don't know. It's early to say. Things can still go wrong and everything. But yeah, I was really impressed by this episode. Episode 4 is fucking incredible. I gotta be honest. And I'm pretty excited to say that. Like, especially when it comes to Dexter content, you know, not everybody's always happy with everything. So I don't know if I'm going to be alone in how much I'm loving this at the moment. Because, you know, I was also somebody who praised the shit out of New Blood, and everybody was complained about that being terrible and whatnot. So maybe I'm going to be alone. I don't know. I hope not. I hope people are liking this. And I guess that's about all that I have to say. So if you're still watching this, thank you so much. I'm really worried this is going to be longer than the episode itself, this video. It just might be. I don't know. I've been recording for a long time, and this is a redo, by the way. Like, oh my god. I've had so much trouble recording this fucking video. Lastly, I just want to thank everybody for returning to these videos and actually caring about what I have to say. I know I'm still a minuscule channel. I don't even have 5,000 subscribers yet, but it means a lot. All the positive comments I've been getting, all the support and everything. Lots of people, I mean, probably not lots of people, but it seems like a lot to me, are really backing me on these. And I don't know, it's just really nice, and I really genuinely appreciate that. And getting the comments from continuous people where it's like, oh yeah, I recognize that profile picture. I know that person, and responding to them and stuff where it's like, wow, we're really forming like this deep audience creator bond here, where I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm actually forming something here where we're sort of like this community of Dexter fans. It's exciting stuff, and it's kind of surreal. It's a new feeling to me still, even though I know I've been feeling this since, I guess, Original Sin days before, where I was getting the views as well. But I don't know. It's cool, and I just want to say thank you. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. Please do that things, which are, of course, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that shit. I'm gonna go now. Goodbye. See you next week.